We are in a catch-22, guys. So the one thing we all agree on is voting, right? We make a political difference, and I think it's the most important election of our lifetimes. I really do. Most important midterm in a landslide, and Ben can attest to this because we've been doing this together for 16 years. I never buy into the hype that it's the most important election. You know, Obama versus Romney. We're either going to have Romney care or Romney care, right? But this one is for all the marbles. So it's if Kemp wins in Georgia, what it does is it says voter suppression is good. It leads to victories, and nobody does a damn thing about it. Okay, and then he'll do more voter suppression. There's no paper trail in Georgia. And right now there's talk, there's reports in Politico about how votes are being switched from Democrat to Republican. And they just say, oh, it's an anomaly. How come the anomaly doesn't go both ways? How come it's only switching from Democrat to Republican?
There were a couple in Texas that switched from Cruz to O'Rourke.
Right, either way, even if that's the case, and I said it on the show, look, I'm not an expert on it. I want reporters in there, I want experts on it, I want people to be able to track it, I want a paper trail, right? Because I don't want conspiracies, I don't want us to distrust one another and distrust the system, right? Why Kemp had every opportunity. They were sued to make sure that there was a paper trail, and he would not do it. He's Secretary of State in Georgia. They say you got to step aside. You're overseeing your own election when you're running for governor. He said, I don't care. I'm not gonna do it.
They opened up, and that's Trump's playbook. That's where he got that. That's what told him that it was okay. And they opened up an investigation into whether the Abrams campaign, right? I'm sure you covered this, Cenk. Whether the Abrams campaign had hacked voting machines, hacked computers, and then offered absolutely no evidence for it whatsoever. Rosanna and I were talking before we came out here. If this were Uruguay or Paraguay, I'm not wondering why I'm picking on the Guays, but that's what I'm going with. No offense, but if we read that the president was running for re-election there, and he was also oversaw the election in a competitive election, we would be like, man, what do you like these third world bumpkins, right? They don't know how to do democracy. We know how to do democracy. I mean, it's an outrage. It should be a moral outrage to every American that Kemp is overseeing that election. It should be an outrage to every American that we elect political positions that serve as secretaries of state that oversee any elections. That shouldn't be a bipartisan thing. That should be a nonpartisan affair everywhere there is an election. And that we have to say that out loud seems comical. So maybe and the notion that happens in the United States still staggers me. I'm still not used to it, sorry.
No, there's apparently a militia group that is saying that if Stacey Abrams is the governor, that they're prepared to fight it with weapons.
Because they've been encouraged. There's 100 militia members heading to the border now. The military is worried that it's more, that it's thousands. And even the Republicans down there are like, what are you guys doing? Don't come here. Look, one guy who's 80 years old, he said, look, he's a Republican, doesn't want undocumented immigrants, he calls them illegals. He says, I've been dealing with illegals for 30 years here. He's like, but this talk of how they're violent and scary is crazy.
There are children that are sick with diarrhea and fevers and walking across the desert with sick. These are not criminals. This is
so
disgusting.
that Republican said, they're generally really scared, and they hide in places they don't want to be caught, etc. But they're not armed. So if you come down here with your guns, we got guns down here already. The Border Patrol have guns. National Guard's being called in; they got guns. He's like, you guys are going to cause a holy mess.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction to implement fear in people's minds, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it's also worse because it's the beginning of brown shirts. So Trump is calling for them, and he doesn't believe in rule of law. And now he's got these goons out there that encourages violence at his rallies. He encouraged violence today again against Antifa, which is short for anti-fascist. He said, "Where's my biker gangs? Who's going to do something about it?" I mean, he encourages violence over and over again. If the Democrats don't win these elections, and you know me, I'm no big fan of the Democratic Party, okay? But if the Republicans don't lose these elections, it gives them free reign. And I mean, these guys with free reign, I think literally the Republic depends on it.
The only downside of hyping correctly, I think, these elections as much as we have, is if it doesn't turn out the right way. Then, even though nothing substantively changes, no law gets passed, we have given enormous political power, as to what you were saying, Cenk, to the guys in power. We've given an enormous political advantage that they will leap and take advantage of.
So today there was some talk, even among some Republicans, that hey, if they lose the House, it's Trump's fault. He'll say it's somebody else's fault. He'll say it was no big deal, et cetera. But no, that's a heavy blow, and he'll be in trouble, right? But imagine if they don't lose the House, even if they lose seats, but they don't lose the House overall. Trump's going to come out and go mandate everything I did. I'm going to double down on because the people just told me I can do it. Racism, I'm going to double down on it.
And there will be enough
violence, double down on it. Anti-immigrant talk, double down on it. They're going to do it all.
And
don't worry,
so we're living under a dictatorship.
Trump will mess up. Trump can mess up a wet dream.
Yeah, well,
this guy is so inept.
I don't even want to think about it.
He is a professional loser.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, don't underestimate this guy. No matter he thinks he wants to win. All he wants is the cameras on him.
That's right.
And he finds out that he gets more action if he's saying ridiculous, stupid things. And the more he tries to lose, the more it seems like he's winning. But he's not winning. He's not winning. What he's doing, he's alienating everybody across America, like the march that came out after he was elected. It's the first time in history that there was a protest right after an election, you know, and so I want everybody just to relax because we're going to not only going to take the House, we're going to take the Senate, we're going to take it all.
I want you to be right. I badly.
So do I.
I know everybody got burned last time because Hillary was going to win, and I'll tell you why Hillary didn't win. FBI.
Yeah, no question.
And the FBI was after Trump. And so if Hillary had won, there would have been no investigation. And so because they know Trump was so dirty, because they started going after Trump when he started that birther crap. And the FBI and the CIA and the intelligence, everybody went after Trump. They know more about Trump than Trump. And Trump knows that they know more about him. That's why he accused him of wiretapping his place. And the FBI wanted Trump to win so they can do what they're doing to him now. And by the way, they're Republicans, and so they got their tax cut. They got everything they want, and now they're going to put Trump in jail. Trump is going to go to jail.
Well, you're far more hopeful than I am, and I'm pretty hopeful. I think they're going to get wiped out, but
you do.
I do. But so to answer your question, Rosanna, I don't think that we're under a dictatorship now. I think we have a plutocracy, unfortunately, and Warren Buffett says the same thing. Paul Volcker, former head of the Fed, says the same thing. Basically, the rich, few rich people rule us all. Sheldon Adelson has given $113 million in just this midterm cycle in political donations. Why? He's gotten back tens of billions of dollars in saving and tax cuts on the estate tax alone, let alone all the rest of the tax cuts that he got. So we are ruled by those guys, but in terms of actual fascism, I wrote an article about it today, tyrt.com/stories. No, look, I think the fascists are here. The question is, tomorrow, do they win or do they lose? Because for now, we do. We have a democracy. You can go and vote. It got rigged a little bit in who was nominated, right? That's always usually how things are rigged. And by rigged, I don't mean conspiratorial or fixing of things. I just mean they get more money poured into them.
Let me just to buttress Cenk's point, because it's a thing that you reminded me of. You know, my father was Bobby Kennedy's press secretary in 1968, and Bobby was, of course, murdered in June. But you know, Eugene McCarthy had run for president of the Democratic Party in 1968, and again, an indication of why there was so many protests, so much violence in the streets in 1968 at the convention. The guy they picked to be the nominee to run against Richard Nixon didn't run in any primaries. Right? So I mean, so you and I have argued a lot over the meaning of the word rigged, but we can agree that's a form of rigging. when one of the nominees is a guy who received 0 votes.
Yeah, when I was seeing the documentary about that, even though I had kind of knew about it, I was like, that's amazing. That's amazing. Why wasn't it one of the guys who ran? They just gave it to him. And as usual with the Democratic Party establishment, total loser. And they bungled it. They thought, oh no, we picked the establishment guy, he'll win. No, he got routed by Nixon.
He didn't get routed. He
But he
barely
lost.
lost.
But to be fair, you're right.
Yeah, he lost.
So what do we do about Fox News and the brainwashing of this?
Well, that's also
and because talk about fake news, that's the narrative that he created, but it's actually them who.
There's a wonderful
report
piece
fake
in the New York
news all
Times
time.
Review of Books a few weeks ago, and they say it better than certainly I can. But the Fox News and the right-wing radio is why whatever sort of plutocratic fascism we'll end up with here, if it has its day, it's not going to look like anything we've seen before. It's not going to look like Duarte in the Philippines. It's not going to look like Franco, and it's not going to look like obviously Germany in the 1930s, because they have this incredibly effective propaganda arm that has effectively denied truth, or at least made truth a debatable subject, right? And then you have a mainstream, certainly television media, that is basically complicit in that, because they're, first of all, they are, and I'm gonna sound like Cenk, they're all, they're part of a giant corporate structure, and they want things to be a certain way, and most of them mean well, right? But you don't get to run NBC News. Who was it? Was it George Lakoff? Who's like, look, you don't get to be the guy who runs General Motors, and the guy who runs Exxon Mobil, right? And the guy who runs US Bank, right? And the guy who runs NBC News, they all kind of have the same worldview. Some of them are more conservative, some of them are a little bit left of conservative, not many, but they have the same idea of how things work. And they want structure, they want a continuation, they want the machinery to continue to run, to maintain the status quo. So when you come up with a propaganda arm that is incredibly effective, that the rest of the media is sort of forced to pay attention to under the structure that we have now, you don't need to arrest the media, right? In Hungary, I just read today that 4 years ago in Hungary, the ruling party, the dictator there in Hungary owned, I'm gonna butcher the numbers, but only slightly, I think they owned 23 media outlets, right? Owned outright, which is dangerous. They now own, 4 years later, over 500 media outlets. So they don't need to take them over. They have them, right? So CNN can continue to go and continue to do its thing. They're not worried about it, because they have an answer to it. And that we never had in this country until Fox started taking on the role that they have.
How did Jerry Hall end up from Mick Jagger to
Oh my God,
Rupert Murdoch?
such a disappointment.
I mean,
Yeah.
Whoa.
She's with Richard Murdoch?
Yeah, Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert
They're married.
Murdoch, yes.
They're married. Yeah.
Yes, they're married.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
I want to do an intervention.
Yeah,
on
I
her.
mean, so last two things here.
So
'cause we gotta-
Murdoch's gay too?
I hadn't heard that one before. So last thing here. Look, to Rosanna's point about Fox News. Look, they went to Charlottesville and they chanted the Jews will not replace us. And then they killed someone. And at one point, they had gone to scope out a synagogue, and the people were inside, and they were afraid to leave, because there were literally Nazis outside their synagogue in America. And Trump came out and said, there are good people on that side, okay? And then there was another synagogue shooting, obviously, just a little while ago, and 11 people are killed. And Fox News made it all seem like, it's okay, it's even. I mean, it's bad, but it wasn't the right wing, but it was the right wing. And Trump didn't encourage it, but he did encourage it. He said there was good people on both sides. So they took the truth and lies and equated it. And so when you do that, it gives the lie an unnatural advantage. And so much of their propaganda, and then the most powerful part of it is the way they beat down the rest of the press. So the minute that the press go, wait, no, but that is fascism. They chanted blood and soil. They chanted the Jews will not replace us. Then they killed the Jews. That is fascism. When you do it to Muslims, by the way, it's also fascism. And then Fox News says, no, you're biased if you say that. And the rest of the press cowers. So to Ben's point, they didn't have to buy the rest of the press. They just needed Fox News to intimidate the rest of them. And look, they're more active than they have been in the past, the rest of the press, but not nearly enough.
And to Rosanna's point earlier, like, yeah, I agree in theory that we have to meet in the middle, but who are we going to meet?
I know. I mean,
who's coming
and
to who's coming to meet us?
You know
I know
what
what you
mean
mean.
by
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean.
No, it's conceptual, but it's like the reality is then what are we supposed to do?
How do we come together here? Because it's so split.
That's
and, can we become our own West Coast country?
And unfortunately, but that leads to your other point, and I really got to wrap up. But like in the old days, you could come to the middle, and you could come to a conclusion. But they've got these people who live in an alternate reality. Again, Emma went down and talked to protesters, ran some of it today. They think that the danger, they were in Florida. The shooting of the women happened in Florida.
Yeah.
And they don't think that's the danger. There's nonstop massacres. There's literally a massacre every single day in America now. Okay?
And the NRA's funding all this.
And they don't think
all the politicians.
And they don't think that's the danger. They think the danger is a bunch of unarmed, poor refugees in a caravan thousands of miles away. And so how do you meet people in the middle when they don't believe in reality? Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.